And I have to talk about the Clippers, and unfortunately, not the most glowing remarks. They got absolutely blown out, routed last night by the New Orleans Pelicans, 135-115. And Kawhi Leonard cited the inconsistencies in the Clippers' play and how that's very, very concerning. And they never led in this game. They trailed by as many as 33 points. Now, one of the reasons why I was so high on the Clippers this year, that I thought the Clippers would be so much better this year, was the presence of Ty Lue, now sitting in the catbird seat, now sitting as the head coach of the Clippers. And I love Doc Rivers, but I think his message wasn't quite sticking with these Clippers players. And I thought that Ty Lue would come in and get these guys to buy in. And to his credit, in the beginning of the season, they absolutely did. Started off 21-8, and they were rolling. They weren't taking days off. And since then, they haven't been able to string together consistent performances. They've been 4-7 in their last 11 games. And consistency was the biggest impediment to the Clippers' success last year. They felt entitled, and they rolled into the postseason with the same attitude that they carried throughout the entire regular season, of this laissez-faire attitude. And they got bounced in an embarrassing fashion by the Denver Nuggets in 7 games. They collapsed, blew a 3-1 series lead. And one of the biggest differences between the Lakers and the Clippers, and why it's okay for the Lakers to occasionally have these underwhelming performances, is because they won the championship last year. So they've earned the right. They've commanded the respect of the league to be able to say on a random day in the middle of February against the Utah Jazz without Anthony Davis, okay, we're going to get blown out. That's why it's okay for a team like that against the Detroit Pistons on some who cares day in January to lose by 15 on the road without Anthony Davis. It's not ideal, but it's acceptable and it's understandable because they've earned that cachet given that they won the NBA championship. The Clippers haven't won anything. So for them to still string together some of these inconsistent performances absolutely baffles me. And they have suffered some perplexingly bad losses and no-shows this year. They lost by 51 points to the Dallas Mavericks earlier in the year. They lost by 28 points fully healthy to the Memphis Grizzlies on the road. And then they just lost by 20 to the New Orleans Pelicans last night. And this is the issue with the Clippers, is I'm not saying that the way that you play in the regular season is going to translate to how you play in the postseason for every team necessarily. Because I think that if you're the defending champion, it's more important to make it into the postseason healthy. And you already have that camaraderie and that chemistry. But for the Clippers, I was expecting this team to buy in from day one, to be dialed in, to not be taking games off, to not be taking games lightly. And instead, what we're seeing is more of the same from last year. And they're starting to resort back and revert back to who they were last year. And that's the biggest issue. And I don't think we'll really know this team's true mettle until the postseason. And I'll be curious to see if they can turn that switch. And this isn't about, listen, I like the Lakers more than the Clippers, but I have tremendous respect for the Clippers players because they've got so much darn talent. They've got so much talent. I view them as the second best team in the Western Conference. And again, I'm not saying that in a vacuum, this one loss to the New Orleans Pelicans is totally revealing of who they are, but in a way it kind of is, because it demonstrates those ebbs and flows of the season, but especially for this team that for whatever reason has not found a way to be locked in throughout an entire season. And that's the biggest issue for me.